steamers had people hanging onto ropes and rigging, dangling against the sides. It's not that they could be seen in the darkness, but their struggling movements, chaotic yells, and the occasional reflection of the burning buildings flashing in their eyes reminded us that we were lucky enough to be cramped on board, pushing and pulling, body against body to keep our places. I kept 2 servants with us, one strong but loyal man to help my husband struggling on his crutches, and Mira to help the eldest few of our children manage the others and carry and watch over the bag. This time, I was dressed in a Hindu man's clothes, my hair pulled back into a safa turban. I carried the baby wrapped in a makeshift harness hidden under my clothing and shawl. I searched for Bharat. In the summer of 1947, the tension was palpable. Everyone was tired from being shut up in their houses, afraid to go outside even for food. I had had the foresight to stock up on dry goods, rice, dal, and flour for chapatis, so we just ate our self-rationed portions at breakfast, not knowing what the day would bring. We just couldn't stay in Karachi. Hindus had to leave Pakistan because of the partition of India. It was supposed to be a slow, bright orange, warm day, but it was clouded with an uncertain future. When I had to leave the house, I dressed as a man for safety. Mira, my servant, taught me how. She began dressing like a man herself to go out after she came home torn and ravaged by otherwise powerless vagabonds roaming the streets. She showed me how to wear Hindu, Sikh, or Muslim clothing, whichever suited my needs. My long, brown, wavy hair was well hidden, wrapped in a Sikh or Muslim turban, or even a Hindu safa. The Hindu-Muslim riots had continued to sweep through one neighborhood after another almost every day for the past few months. Lives were being destroyed by violence, murder, rape, and suicide. We should have left weeks ago. The deadline was relentless in its approach. But how do you leave? How do you leave your home, your land, your animals, and most of your belongings behind? Would we make it to Gujarat? And if we did, what then? We had only one radio, and we had it on whenever possible. I should have been less surprised when the partition was announced, that Pakistan was to be formed from a part of India. I was always proud that Mahatma Gandhi was Indian and Hindu too, but sometimes when I've snuck about in men's clothing, I've overheard other men saying Gandhi started this whole thing, along with the newly appointed prime ministers of Pakistan and India. It was Jinnah, Nehru, and Gandhi. The doors and windows were closed and barred. We had to pack what we could carry. We had to leave jewelry, loose gemstones, and artwork behind. I managed to strap wheels to the steel bands on my trunk. It was lightly packed with my trousseau. The heirlooms passed down from the women on my mother's side would add too much weight to the trunk, so we had to find another way. Mira and I stitched the important jewelry into our clothing and the children's clothing. I didn't want my husband to know I was bringing this jewelry and leaving behind certain less valuable pieces belonging to his family. I heard parts of Nehru's speech on the radio while we packed. I turned it off when the cries of Jai Hind became too loud and dangerous for unkind ears. We were, after all, in the part of India that was to become the Muslim nation, Pakistan. When I heard we had to flee our homes, all I could think about was seeking out my lover, danger or no. Leaving Nitin with his brothers, sisters, and Mira, I hoped I could convince Bharat to leave with us. My husband was not adjusting well. After he had been attacked, it was necessary to amputate his leg above the knee. The journey would be very hard on him, and the doctor said he wouldn't survive very much longer. Soon after he died, I knew Bharat and I could be together. It's a terrible thought to have, I know. My marriage to my husband was arranged. Bharat is my choice. After my husband's death and in a new place, we could begin our life together anew. I couldn't openly be with Bharat here. Everyone knew about my husband. Everyone knew Bharat never married because of a great love lost. If people found out, our lives would be forever tainted and we would face a lifetime of ostracism. It would affect not just us, but the children. When we left Karachi, we could be together and would not have to bear the stigma of our society. I needed Bharat. I had to risk going outside so I could see him. I walked through one after another invisible clouds of petrol and gunpowder smells that hung in the air from the homemade bombs. It was cool and damp from the ocean breeze in the night, so I could hide my body and face in a rough woolen shawl, the wetness from my breath alternately keeping me warm, then quickly cooling. I stayed as close as possible to the walls of buildings avoiding lighting, and groups of men comprised of friends and strangers, and crossed the roads only when necessary to reach each next building. My real foes were the solitary men I would pass along the way. They walked alone, looking for a pack they could join, eager to begin talking to anyone. I wanted to melt into the shadows. I arrived at Bharat's home and crept up slowly to look through the window. He was there. I tapped lightly on the wooden door a couple of times. When he opened the door, he didn't recognize me at first, though he'd seen me dressed as a man before with my face darkened and wrapped up. His clear amber eyes searched mine for a moment before he deftly wrapped one strong arm around my waist and pulled me to him as he shut the door with his foot. I knew he would admonish me for venturing out on this dangerous night, but first, he lowered the shawl below my chin and cradled my head back into his palm. Arms wrapped around shoulders and backs. Sometimes the kisses were so hard and fast the lip was crushed between the pressure and teeth, his stubble leaving scratches on my face. By this time, he was pressing me up against the door, his hands reaching for the sides of my neck inside the scarf. With a single, swift, outward movement, he slipped the scarf free of my shoulders. He slowly undraped the remains of clothing from my body. After each bit of skin was revealed, I became more hypnotized by the thrill of anticipation, the fascination he had with tasting my insides, with rolling my skin and muscles under his palms and fingers. He drank me with his body. My husband was the furthest thing from my mind, but I wondered at how little I felt when he touched me compared to when Bharat did. It's always been the same argument between us. How can we be together? Bharat knew I had been beaten and locked in a room when I tried to suggest to my family my misgivings about marrying the man they chose. The bruises were hidden by my wedding sari draped over my face. We had adopted a form of burqa from the Muslims for our weddings. It kept away the evil eye and prevented others from falling in love and becoming amorous kidnappers. Bharat knew this. I am, his childhood sweetheart. I loved him, but these, our rendezvous, were the only way we could be together. Bharat, we are leaving for Gujarat as soon as we hear it is clear. I need you. I want you. But I will not beg. He playfully jostled me out of the comfortable sweetness of our freshly sexed bed. I wrapped myself back up as he sat looking out the window, his back to me, watching the commotion outside. I found the perfect opportunity to open his bureau and sneak out a picture his family had taken of him the year before. I rolled it and slipped it in my dhoti, trying not to crush it with the drawstring tie. When I was finished, I moved toward the door, reluctant to leave him. He came to me. He held my face in his hands and kissed my smudged forehead. Then he kissed my mouth for a moment before covering it with the shawl. He reluctantly pushed me out the door, and through that door, I whispered the location of the steamer and what to look for to know when the steamer would be leaving. I knew he'd be just inside listening, and I hoped he'd change his mind. After my husband died, I would be alone in a new place with 7 children. What would we do for money? As a woman, I could not go back to my own family. I needed Bharat more than he needed me, and he knew this. There were too many people, and I couldn't find Bharat anywhere. My husband was useless to me. I wished for Bharat. My eyes strained to find his, though I willed the rest of my body into tense composure with my husband close by. My children were frightened and clinging to one another, for once not getting into mischief. Under my loose clothing, I held baby Nathan just a little closer to my heart. A flash of light. This gunpowder bomb had exploded somewhere close by on land as we were leaving the harbor. Another explosion hit another passenger boat nearby on the water. The faces on our steamer were lit for a moment. Normally guarded faces betrayed fear in every direction that night. I clutched my sleeping baby tighter, his amber eyes so like his father's. At one glance, I drank in the faces, and in that split second, I knew I had not seen both. A third explosion lit the sky much closer than the first 2. It had enough force to rock our steamer. For us, the explosion was accompanied by the splashes of falling bodies. There were people trying to climb the ropes and rigging on the side of the boat to get on board. It was a dangerous and desperate prospect. Men were transformed by an animal instinct to survive, scrambling for a place on the steamer. There was no room on board. As the steamer rocked from the explosions, the people clutching the ropes would fall off. I thought those who managed to hold on would not be able to board and would simply fall off during this journey south. Those unlucky few who couldn't gain their space on the overloaded boat hung on for as long as they could. The boat rocked violently again. More bodies fell screaming from the ropes, stopped by the impact of water. I shielded my little one from the people around us as we lost our footing and fell against one another. This time, In a brief slant of light, I saw 2 pairs of eyes against the railing. One set of liquid, warm amber, the other dark and cold. "You're here!" I wanted to shout, but I dared not bring attention to myself holding Nitin. My cold fingers tightened. I saw a hand come from behind Bharat, pulling his head backward. "No, look out, stop him!" The screams were caught in my throat. I watched, horrified. The scene unfolded. There was a flash from the other side. Is it a blade? I watched the blood pulse from his neck, sliced from the side to the middle. Bharat grabbed at his own throat. His eyes were rounded and bulging. His eyes seemed to know what he didn't yet. It was a fatal wound. There was no scream. I couldn't hear it, but I saw a gurgling exhale and a wet gasp for air. His lungs and my heart drowned together. The light was already fading from his eyes as he searched the crowd looking for me. "Yes, I'm here. You're not alone." The strength ebbed from his muscles and his beautiful amber eyes rolled back. My body ached, yet I couldn't move to prevent Bharat's body from being pulled overboard and replaced by the dark-eyed man. The stranger who pulled himself onto the side of the steamer. His will and desperation was strong. My body felt drugged, but my mind raced. I had to keep still. No one should know my reaction, but I wanted everyone to know my pain. What about Nitin? What about this child? What about us? What now? Our future life together was drowned in blood. Nitin, our baby, would never remember Pakistan nor ever return to it. Nitin would never know his father. My journey to India, the future I envisioned, ended before it had ever begun. The rain arrived in India when we did. It is called monsoon. Such a beautiful word for such a terrible thing. It's not clear to me whether the monsoon brought more life than death. In a humid climate, water is everywhere, in everything. The air itself is damp. Dust is like water in that way. You breathe it in, it sits on your clothes, it gets in your hair, it gets into your skin. But it's easier to control than the wet. The monsoon is the worst kind of wet there is. The monsoon is not a shower. It is not a heavy rain or a torrent. Those take time to wet. The monsoon is instant saturation. It comes down that fast. The monsoon wets my clothes and makes my cotton blouse and sari stick to my skin, which is particularly harassing when I'm running errands. By the time it's finished, I'm left mustering what's left of my dignity, wishing I were safe in men's clothing, warding off the greedy eyes of the hundreds of men around me. Their necks churning and stretching to drink in my wet body during it, turning it into an erotic thing once again, when all I want to do is forget. I try to forget the days that brought us to this place, to where the monsoons come, but they haunt my dreams. I always preferred the dry dust.